All right, guys. So welcome to today's Thrive Nutrition Workshop, where, as you can see here, the couple of topics we're going to discuss today. First of all, we're going to look at how to set up your exercise and nutrition so you're organized for lockdown 3.0. Then we're going to move into the 3 rules for guaranteed fat loss. And I guess just a point to make, the information that I'm going to discuss today is really there for you just as advice based off over the last 10 years of working with members such as yourself, and the correlations to what I've seen to what gets good results in terms of getting decent results with fat loss and getting yourself organized with your exercise and nutrition. So hopefully the topics that we discussed today provide you with some food for thought and allow you to get set up nicely as we move through 2021, and at the same time we move through these lockdown periods. So the first topic we're going to discuss today, as mentioned, is how to set up your training and your nutrition for this current lockdown 3.0. So here you can see the topics we're going to discuss. Is the first of all is the ball ache scale, and why I believe 92% of people actually fail here. We're then going to move on to goals designed by TomTom. And then your third topic is starter engines, strategies for healthy habits. And then really the outcomes I want you to take away from this webinar, this workshop, is that, first of all, have a clear understanding of what you're willing and what you're not willing to commit to. I think this is a common mistake that people forget when they're kicking off new sort of healthy habits, is they kind of throw themselves into the deep end a little bit and then forget about what actually they can realistically commit to. We're going to identify some clear process goals for January, so how to set up your goals properly and make sure those goals are strong and sturdy. And then you're going to know which tools you have available to you and which ones are going to work best for you as an individual, and that essentially fit into your lifestyle. So moving on, you can see here, this is the ball ache scale. So apologies for the picture, but this is where we need to start. Okay, and what this is referring to is what you are willing to and what you are not willing to commit to. Like I mentioned a minute ago, people throw themselves in, especially at a time like this in January. It's quite an enthusiastic time of year to pick up your sort of health and fitness goals, and you might have the intention to essentially try and do 100 things, and then 2 to 3 weeks down the line, you're wondering why you're demotivated, you're not on board with your goal, and it's probably because you've not thought about what's right for you and what fits into your lifestyle. So what we're referring to here is, you can sort of see this arrow on one end of the spectrum. We've got, in this particular case, when it comes to nutrition, you've got something which might require some more time and effort, such as something like MyFitnessPal. Then keeping with the realm of nutrition, you've got something in the middle, which is something like your fat loss habit tracker, which you would have received via email on the weekend. Or you've got something down the opposite end of the spectrum, such as intuitive eating, which doesn't require a head of a lot of organization and a lot of detail, where an example of that is you might consciously make a decision to, instead of having 5 bottles of wine a week, you're going to have 3. And that, obviously, removing those 2 bottles of wine is obviously pushing the needle in the right direction. So really, from this slide here, I want you to think about where you might fit in on that particular scale, and make sure that the habits and the sort of systems and stuff that you're looking to put in place in January are things that you can realistically commit to, and always use this scale as a tool that's going to work for you, and just give you a bit of an insight into where you sit on it, and what's going to be the most appropriate direction for yourself. And I think if you start here and you start with this ball ache scale, this will honestly set you up with strong and sturdy sort of goals, and will certainly increase your chances of getting good, long-lasting results as you move throughout the year. So from there, once we kind of figured out what we're willing to and what we're not willing to commit to, we need to have a think about our goals and what we're actually setting out to achieve. And again, this is where most people fall short, because their goals that they set themselves with are fairly useless because they don't mean a hell of a lot. And the second caveat to that is they might have a goal, but the goals have almost got no legs to stand on because they don't make it specific or measurable enough. And they don't think about any habits or behaviors that are linked to that goal. They just come up with a goal such as this one. I'm going to drop 10 pounds in January. And that's as far as that goes. So to explain that a little bit further, we're using this TomTom principle here, where most people will just set themselves a goal. It's almost like getting in your car and setting yourself the goal of, right, I'm going to drive to a destination. So I'm going to drive to London, but without using the sat nav. Now, the benefit of getting in your car, driving to London and having the sat nav is the sat nav is almost those directions. It gives you a sort of a system or a process to get there, such as turn right here, turn left here, you know what I mean? So it's what we're looking for here, and the underlying principle behind this message is, yes, have your destination or have your goal, but then let's turn the sat nav on and use that sat nav metaphor to make sure we've got a clear or clearly identifying habits and behaviors and systems that we're putting in place to help us get to that goal. And what we're talking about here is these habits or behaviors are more process goals. And now when it comes to your goal setting, this is a good place to start, because process goals are making our big goal a bit more specific and a bit more measurable. And normally when we're setting process goals, we're looking to identify daily and or weekly habits that, if we achieve those daily or weekly habits, they're going to get us to our end destination. So on the screen here, you can see there's 5 examples. So a good example could be each week I'm going to commit myself to using the MindBody app and booking in 2 Zoom sessions and getting them completed. A second example would be every Sunday, for example, I'm going to do a weekly shop. And when I turn up at the shops, I've got a food list ready and written. So I'm not just walking around the shops aimlessly, picking up random things that you probably don't need. Number 3 there is I'm going to track my nutrition daily, referring back to that ball ache scale and figuring out the best appropriate way of doing that for you, whether it's using your fat loss habit tracker or MyFitnessPal. Another one could be a bit more on the intuitive side of things, but just making a conscious effort to increase the amount of vegetables that you're having at each meal. Or the 5th and final one there, based around accountability, is you're going to contact a friend and use them as your workout partner, and you can organize your sessions together. And that way, that might help you achieve getting some extra workouts done, because you've got a little bit more accountability. So it's really important as we move into January, as we move forward throughout the program, is, yes, you have your big goal, you've got that destination, but let's use that sat nav, that TomTom metaphor, and get those directions, or in this case, those process goals, to help make sure that that goal is strong and sturdy. And that way, if we've got a few process goals that we know we're hitting throughout the week, it's going to mean that if we have any barriers that sort of come in throughout the week, that these process goals helps us get around those barriers. So moving forward from there, we've got our process goals set. We know where we're going. We know the destination that we're trying to get. Now we've got a couple of different engines I'm going to refer to you. And these are essentially different ideas of what you can start to put into place throughout the next couple of weeks with regards to your exercise and nutrition. So the first one here, you would have all received the Lockdown Fitness Club PDF. And essentially, this is a tiered system to hold yourself accountable to doing some exercise. So if you've got the sheet, you would have seen that there's essentially 4 exercise modalities that we've put on the sheet for you. So walking, running, riding indoor or outdoor, or your PT sessions. And what we're expecting you to do is hold yourself accountable to one of those tiers on either one of those exercise modalities, or you can do multiple. So for example, someone might hold themselves accountable to tier 3 on doing some Zoom PT sessions, which means that they're going to be hitting 3 Zoom PT sessions per week. And that's just a good start for someone to hold themselves accountable. And that's a good process goal, as we've already discussed. Another option there could be exercise tracking, which is a common one. Now, tracking is a good way to help your motivation. So on the Lockdown Fitness Club PDF, we provided a tracking sheet at the back. And I think just tracking, whether it's your nutrition or your training, is really powerful. Writing something down, just getting it out of your head and writing something down can have a huge impact on not only your accountability, but your motivation as well. So just writing down on the tracking sheet what exercise you've hit for that day is a great place to start. However, some other common ones, a couple of apps here. So Strava is a common one for those people who like to see their stats, such as their distance that they might have run or they've rode, or their heart rate. It can help motivate the people to see the numbers and sort of see how hard they're working, see how far they've completed. And also on apps such as Strava, you can sort of link up with other people on Strava and kind of set challenges as well. So it helps nice with the accountability. MyZone there, you probably know about. So MyZone is a good one. What we like about MyZone is you get the MEPs, the MyZone effort points. And that can help motivate, as someone may give themselves a goal of maybe hitting, 3,000 MyZone effort points MEPs across the month. And that's their accountability. And that's their goal for the month. Another common one might be a daily or weekly step count, such as hit 10,000 steps a day or something. The one caveat I'd just like to remind you when it comes to something like a step count is don't sort of overcommit yourself. Sort of the common target is around 10,000 steps a day. However, if you're doing roughly 2,000 or 3,000 steps a day, maybe committing to 10,000 steps a day is a rather large jump. So maybe just add on 1,000. Yeah. So if you're already doing 2,000 steps a day and you're interested in increasing that weekly step count, or maybe just try and get yourself to 3,000 for the following week, and you can incrementally increase as you go from there. Exercise partners, we mentioned this briefly a minute ago, but having someone to hold yourself accountable is a great way to get some exercise done, because most of us don't like letting people down. So contact a friend or a partner or whatever, and maybe organize to do some challenges together, or turn up to the same Zoom PT together, or go out for a walk or a run together. Hopefully you get my gist on that one. And then making sure you set up your environment. So this is key. So we obviously did the equipment list. So for you guys and the members, just to grab a little bit of equipment, so you've got something to use when it comes to your Zoom sessions. Maybe it might come down to maybe having a conversation with people in your household, just to make sure they know when you're doing some Zoom sessions or some YouTube sessions. So you've got that time, you've got that space in the living room for 45, 60 minutes. You know it's uninterrupted, the dog's out the room. You're setting that space up appropriately, so you're not distracted, and you can sort of take that time out and get the work done that's needed. So that's engine number 1. Engine number 2, we can look at the nutrition side of things. So again, especially the nutrition side of things, I would refer yourself back to that ball ache scale and kind of see where you stand on that. But over the years, those who track and those who will do some form of tracking, whatever that might be, are the ones that get results. We can't hide away from that. It's the fact that you're more mindful around your nutrition. It doesn't particularly matter what sort of technique and which sort of tool you do to track, whether that's just doing a food diary, or I don't know, following something on here like I put on Slimming World, or doing a habit tracker, or doing MyFitnessPal. The point is you find the right method that works for you, that you can be consistent with, and then that's going to be the real sort of telltale to getting some good quality results. So like I said a minute ago, those who track, those who are being more mindful and organized around nutrition, are the ones that are going to get results. So I would certainly start with some form of tracking as we move over the next week or two. From there, this is a good piece of advice. So again, over the last 10 years or so, the guys that tend to write out like a weekly meal planner, again, are those who are more organized and are those are going to get the results that they set out to achieve. So maybe write down 5 to 7 days throughout the week. So put on a little spreadsheet, for example, put in roughly 3 meals per day, or whatever your normal eating routine is, and make sure you plan prior to the start of the week. So for example, a good time to do this would be on maybe a Sunday afternoon. You sit down and have a think about and get yourself organized for the week ahead. Like I said before, do a little spreadsheet, or maybe get yourself a whiteboard or something like that and put it in the kitchen or somewhere that can be clearly seen. And maybe if need be, you get buy-in from other people in your household so everyone knows kind of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that's a great place to start. So that's the meal planner example. From there, you might feel that you kind of need some meal inspiration or meal ideas. Now, it's a really common question that we get is, what should I be eating, or can you write us a meal plan or whatever? Now, it's not our job to provide you with meal ideas because we don't know what you like to eat. It's your job to make sure you're taking full control over your nutrition. And that starts with not only you maybe doing a meal planner or doing some form of tracking, but also making sure you're eating the foods that you like to eat. This isn't about you following some strict diet or meal plan that someone's written for you. It's chicken, broccoli, and rice, boring foods that's never going to last the test of time. What this is about is you taking full control over your nutrition, and that starts with you planning meals for yourself that you actually enjoy eating. So whether that means you get some recipe books, we've got a few here at the gym, like the Jamie Oliver ones, the Body Coach ones are pretty popular, and use that as inspiration to plan some meals ahead of time. We've got the food blogs. So a popular one is like BBC Good Food. There's food blogs there, or different Facebook groups. So this evening in the Thrive Facebook group, Trisha kindly put a link in there to a different Facebook group, which is all about slow cooker recipes, for example. Instagram, so that's actually where, like, the Body Coach, for example, sort of made his fame, where he made sort of quick 60-second video recipes of quick tasty meals. So that could be a good place to go. And like I said there, this really is a key sort of habit for those who get great results, because at the end of the day, it's all about taking control over what you eat. This evening, I did put a post into the Thrive Facebook group for recipe ideas of like stews, casseroles, hot pots, that sort of thing. So refer back to that, because that's in the Facebook group as well. But again, this is a solid starting point for you to take control over the nutrition and start moving the needle with regards to nutrition in a positive direction. So we've looked at engine number 1. That's your exercise. We've got a few ideas there of where you can start gaining some control and start getting yourself organized. We then move to nutrition, and we've got some solid starting points there. And what you might like to do is kind of take just start with a couple of things or one thing from the exercise side of things, or maybe you like just to say, no, I'm going to focus on nutrition because that's where I need to focus my attention. Or you could potentially combine the two engines, which is okay. So you could do a little bit from your nutrition, you could do a little bit from exercise, which logic makes sense. If you're doing more things, that's a more powerful engine, so therefore you might reach your destination quicker. But remember, because it's a more powerful engine, you've got a few things going on at the same time, it's harder to control. So make sure you don't take on too much and give yourself too much to do, because like I said at the start of this webinar, you're only going to be left with feeling demotivated and sort of falling off the wagon. And that's, I think, a really common mistake that people make, because they don't refer back to their ball ache scale. They don't think about what they're willing and they're not willing to commit to. And then all of a sudden, on the 1st of January, they've decided that they're going to start tracking their nutrition. They're going to start training 5 times a week on Zoom. They're going to decide they're going to go out for some runs, and they've decided that they're going to do whatever else, and then it's taken on too much. So be honest with yourself and be clear with yourself on what the key actions that you need to take. Start with the ball ache scale, start with the goal setting, setting up some quality process goals, and then maybe think about engine number 1, engine number 2, exercise and nutrition, and then going from there. And that will provide you with a good, solid starting point. So really there, to summarize this part of the webinar, this would be a good slide. If you want to get your phones out, you can take a picture of this slide, as it's a brief summary on sort of 3 key points of where I'd recommend you start. So number 1, like I mentioned just now, is decide where you are on that ball ache scale, and that is referring to what you're willing and what you're not willing to commit to, and being clear and identifying that. From number 2, you're going to write down your January goal. So this is essentially your destination, but we know this doesn't mean a hell of a lot. However, it's good to write down a solid goal so you know your destination. So in this particular case, there's a couple of examples here. I'm going to lose 10 pounds by the 1st of February 2021. Or I'm going to increase my in-body score by a couple of points by the 1st of February 2021. Now that's your destination. You've got that solid, you've got that written down. It's important we back up that big goal with some solid process goals. So in this particular case, this comes back to that sat-nav tom-tom metaphor. So the first example here, I've put number 1 is you're going to hold yourself accountable to doing a couple of Zoom or YouTube workouts each week. And then maybe a little bonus point in there as well. If you want to get a workout partner on board, we know that's going to help with your accountability and getting those sessions done. Number 2 there is taking time out on a Sunday afternoon, perhaps, or a time that suits you, to start with your 5 or a 7-day meal plan. And like we discussed a minute ago, getting some meal ideas if we need it, resorting back to some recipe books, getting onto those food blogs, maybe taking a look at the Facebook groups, and that can help build a solid food plan. Number 3 might be that you're going to begin some nutrition tracking. So we've discussed already, you've got things such as MyFitnessPal. And if you've not used MyFitnessPal before, you would have received in your first email at the weekend the YouTube video that I've made on how to use MyFitnessPal and how to get set up. So refer back to that if you have any issues with that. Or perhaps you'd just like to use your habit tracker, or perhaps you've got a preferred other method that you've tried and tested in the past and you feel confident doing. And then the 4th one I put on there as an example, because it's a popular one. Maybe you want to look at reducing your alcohol consumption from X to Y. Now the reason why I put X to Y on there instead of just cutting it out, because I'm just not a big fan of extremes or going to the extreme of things. So I'm not really a big fan of things like dry January. The reason being, you're probably going to come back to drinking alcohol at some point. So that's just my opinion on it. I get why people do things like dry January to sort of mentally get themselves in check. However, in terms of long-term benefits, it doesn't tend to have a particularly long-term benefit, things like that. So maybe just thinking about and organizing yourself, reducing your consumption from X to Y would be a better place to start. So hopefully that gives you a good solid starting point here of where you can get started and how you can get yourself organized as we move through January. So moving on, we're going to look at our 3 key rules for guaranteed fat loss. Now, when it comes to nutrition, it's important that, well, for us as coaches here, it's important that we try and simplify the nutrition for you guys. It allows you to sort of regain control. For most people, nutrition is, well, one, it's like opening a can of worms because there's so many conflicting opinions out there, different ways of doing things, and really, through my experience, all that does is just leaves people confused. So really what we're looking for to get out of these next few slides is a good solid starting point and a basic understanding of what we're trying to achieve from our nutrition. And the 2 parts that we're going to look at is we're going to look at the nutrition pyramid, and that's going to explain a little bit more detail on where maybe you should focus your attention in a particular order. And then we're going to go through, as mentioned, 3 key rules when it comes to your nutrition. So you can see here on the screen, we've got our nutrition pyramid. And from the bottom, so adherence, we got here at the bottom, we're working all the way up from calories, macronutrients, micronutrients, meal timing, and supplements. However, the important point here is the most important things are here at the bottom. So, for example, here, the most important thing is here is adherence. So we want to make sure, first and foremost, we have a nutrition plan set up that we can adhere to, which is why I've previously spoke about having to think about what you're willing to and what you're not willing to commit to. So, for example, if you were vegan, as an example, but you've got a nutrition plan that wants you to eat chicken, turkey, and beef, well, it's not going to work for you. I know that's an extreme, obvious, exaggerated example there, but it is just to put that into context. And then once we feel like we are following a nutrition plan that's working for us, it fits into our lifestyle, it fits into everything that we've got going on outside of our sort of realm of health and fitness, is we then need to make sure that essentially the amount of food that we're eating is right for us and as an individual. Okay, and when it comes to this, calories are king. Okay, that's obviously calories from sort of like food and drink, and it's making sure you're having the right amount that are right for you, that support your goals. So for most people, they need to be eating a certain amount of calories, which put them in a calorie deficit, so they're dropping a little bit of body fat, but it's very much on an individual level based on your expenditure throughout the day. From there, once we have the individual happy with eating the sort of the amount of food that they're having, and they're getting good quality results off that, and that's where things like the InBody scanner come in, and where we can track you on that and see how your body fat's dropping and perhaps how you're maintaining or increasing muscle mass. From there, we look up to things like macronutrients, and macronutrients really are essentially looking at things like carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. All right. So they're your 3 key ones highlighted here from the bracket. We don't particularly look at things like micronutrients, early doors, or things like meal timing or supplements. However, it might be really common when people are first starting out with their nutrition is they kind of get this this pyramid flipped the wrong way around. So people are wondering if they're having dinner at 9 p.m. at night is right for them, or they're wondering, which supplements are best for fat loss, etc., etc. And they're forgetting to even get the most important base setup of the adherence here as their sort of primary focus. From there, moving forward, now we know where we stand on the nutrition pyramid, and we want to make sure that we're, first of all, adhering and got a nutrition plan set up. We want to look at these 3 key nutrition rules, one step at a time. So when it comes to nutrition, I think everyone knows this already. Making sure the bulk of your nutrition is made up of single ingredient foods, or not junk food so much. And I think I don't need to elaborate on this point too much, because every time I do a nutrition coaching session here in house, and I ask someone, what does a healthy plate look like, or what's a healthy meal? Everyone knows the answer to that. Everyone knows what healthy food is. That's not really the problem. I think where people struggle is organizing themselves to make sure they're able to eat healthy food, because we've all got such busy lifestyles. And that's why it's so important that you refer back to the first discussion we had a minute ago on getting yourself organized and getting yourself up, set up, and that's going to put you in good stead. But to slightly elaborate on this point, what we're talking about here is essentially eating real food. So you can see here on the nutrition pyramid here, we're trying to make up the bulk of that diet with fresh, sort of wholesome food. Like I said a minute ago, eating real food. And the real benefit of this is, it's going to increase energy. It's going to improve your sort of hunger or satiety levels. And it have a bunch of other benefits as well. But you can see here at the top of the pyramid, which we'll elaborate more in a minute, it's important to keep those sort of indulgent type foods in there, but making sure 80% of your nutrition is made up of good quality real food. And then as we move on to point number 2, and this is an important point, because again, being flexible is an important approach to when it comes to nutrition. Setting yourself up and being really strict with yourself, expecting you to follow a really strict meal plan, cut out alcohol, cut out everything you enjoy, is never going to last. So you have to be flexible, but you also need to make sure you're managing that flexibility correctly. And that's where things like the food tracking and stuff come in. So we're all human. We all like indulgent foods, whatever that might be. And like I said a minute ago, having indulgent foods makes up a healthy meal plan. An important part to nutrition, from a wider perspective, is emotions come into a big part of nutrition, especially times like this at the moment where we've got a lot of uncertainty and stuff going on. And, sort of being in tune with your emotions and maybe realizing why you might resort to certain foods because you feel a certain way, there's no problem with that. Okay. But like I said before, it comes down to how you organize yourself and how you manage yourself. You cannot expect yourself to, just because it's January, to follow a super strict diet plan. So make sure you include those sort of indulgent foods, whatever they might be, but they want to make up roughly, like it says here on the screen, 20% of your diet. And I feel where a lot of people go wrong with this is they feel like those indulgent foods are the problem. So on a Friday night, they have a Chinese takeaway or whatever, and then suddenly feel like they've fallen off the wagon. The problem isn't there that you've had a Chinese takeaway. The problem is there that you've not been organized throughout the rest of the week. Whereas if you were organized throughout the rest of the week, that Chinese takeaway or the Friday, Saturday night where you've got a couple of bits of indulgence in there make no difference because you've been organized throughout the week. So it starts with that. The problem isn't these indulgence foods, the problem is that we need to get ourselves organized and get a bit more of a hand and a grip on our nutrition. And then rule number 3, to make sure we get ourselves into that calorie deficit, is referring back to that ball ache scale when it comes to nutrition. And rule number 3 here is sort of a 2-stage approach. The first stage is, like I said before, you've got to start with tracking. Those guys who do some form of tracking, those guys are being more mindful and being more organized around your nutrition. It's really going to increase your chances of getting, good quality results 5-fold. So this is rule number 3. Start with doing some form of tracking, whatever works for you. Like I said before, if that's doing a food diary, using things like MyFitnessPal, or using your fat loss habit tracker sheet, or following, I don't know, something like Slimming or something that you trust in. You've got to make sure you're doing something. And then from there, once the individual is happy with their tracking, we can start looking at individual targets. So that comes from using something like MyFitnessPal. The benefit of using maybe MyFitnessPal is you're putting in your food diary each day, and then it gives you the feedback of, one, how many calories and stuff that you haven't, but also things like your protein, carbs, and fats. And then we can start giving you individually different or tailoring your diet, giving you different targets for your protein, for example, or reducing your carbohydrates. Okay, and that's the benefit of using something like MyFitnessPal. So if you're new to MyFitnessPal and you're not so sure on it, I'd refer you back to the video you received in your information email at the weekend, which is showing you how to get set up on MyFitnessPal and how to get going with it. And I think a final point here on the tracking side of things is to remember it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, it really doesn't. The amount of times I've had nutrition coaching with members and they've bought in their, let's say, for example, their MyFitnessPal, and the way they've logged it, it certainly hasn't been accurate, but because they've actually just been logging something and being more mindful and holding themselves to being accountable to doing some form of food tracking, they've actually got great results. So yes, it does not have to be perfect. If you can get it as bob on as you can, then that's obviously always best. But it does not have to be perfect. It's just the act of doing some form of tracking is going to be the point that gets you the great results. So from there, we've looked at to summarize those 3 key rules. So rule number 1, which I think we all know, is to keep your nutrition as simple as possible. So you want to do that by the majority of your nutrition being made up of single ingredient foods. That's 70 to 80% of your diet, if you will, is made up of those single ingredients or fresh foods. Rule number 2, we're all human. Emotions are a sort of a key part to what influences your decisions when it comes around nutrition. So you have to allow yourself to be flexible, and how you organize and manage that is up to you. Then number 3 is that sort of 2-stage approach where we want to make sure we're tracking our food in whatever way works for us. And then if we are using things like MyFitnessPal, then we can start to sort of individualize that diet a little bit more. Once we get used to tracking our food, we can look at things like carbohydrates and protein and go from there. So that's the end of today's presentation. Hopefully that's clear, and we look forward to seeing you next week for week 2 of the live webinars.